Captain Taeho Kim stared at the broken pieces of the KSS Dauntless, floating in the darkness of space. Just 6 hours ago, it had been Earth's best ship. Now it was just trash. His hands formed tight fists as he watched from the small window of the escape pod. "How many made it out?" he asked, his voice low and steady despite the anger inside him. Jisoo Park looked up from her tablet. As the ship's head engineer, she had been trying to make sense of what happened. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice stayed professional. 86 out of 112 crew members, Captain, she said. Most of the missing were in the engine room when the first hit came. Taeho closed his eyes for a moment. 26 good people gone in an instant. People he had chosen for this mission. People who had families waiting for them back on Earth. "The Vorn didn't even warn us," said Sungmin, the tactical officer. His arm was in a makeshift sling, broken during their escape. 1 minute we were on a regular patrol route. The next minute they appeared from nowhere and opened fire. "They didn't want our ship or our cargo," Jisoo added. "They just wanted to break us, to send a message." The 3 officers fell silent as they watched more escape pods join their small cluster. The mining outpost on asteroid DH7 was sending out rescue ships, but they would take another hour to reach them. 7 years of peaceful space exploration had made humans feel safe in the galaxy. After meeting 7 different alien species, all of them friendly or at least willing to talk, humanity had grown confident. The KSS Dauntless was not even a warship. It was a diplomatic vessel, designed to show the best of human technology, while making first contact with new civilizations. The Vorn Confederacy had changed everything with one surprise attack. "Why?" asked Du Young, the Yum communications officer. "We never even met them before. We were just passing through the neutral zone on our way to the Arcturian meetings. We did nothing wrong." Taeho turned from the window. Sometimes doing nothing wrong isn't enough. The Vorn have been watching us, studying our expansion into space. They decided we're a threat before we ever had a chance to prove otherwise. The rescue ships finally arrived, attaching to the escape pods and bringing the survivors aboard. The mining outpost was small and not made for so many visitors, but the workers cleared out storage rooms and shared their living spaces to make room for the dauntless crew. Dr. Han, the ship's medical officer, set up a treatment area in the outpost cafeteria. The injuries ranged from broken bones to severe burns, but thanks to the quick evacuation, most were not life-threatening. Still, the doctor moved from patient to patient with a grim expression. "Captain," she called as Taeho entered the makeshift medical bay. "Most will recover fully, but Officer Chen needs specialized care. The outpost doesn't have the equipment I need." "How long does he have?" Taeho asked. 3 days, maybe 4. He needs surgery for internal bleeding." Taeho nodded. "The nearest Earth Alliance base is 5 days away at the outpost's best speed. I'll find a faster solution." He found the outpost's manager, a tough old miner named Choi, in the communications room. "I need to send a priority message to Earth Command," Taeho said. "And I need your fastest transport ship." Choi looked up from the array of screens monitoring the asteroid's mining operations. "The comm relay can get your message to Earth in about 6 hours. As for my ships, they're all slow bulk carriers except for my personal runner. She's small but fast. Can make it to Outpost 37 in 2 days if pushed hard. I need that ship for my injured crew member." "Take it," Choi said without hesitation. "My brother was on the Jakarta when the Corellian virus hit 10 years ago. An Earth ship diverted to save him and the others. We pay our debts." Taeho clasped the older man's shoulder in thanks, then sat down at the communication station. He needed to tell Earth what had happened, but more importantly, he needed to warn them. This was not a simple misunderstanding or territorial dispute. The Vorn attack was calculated, precise, the opening move in what could become a war. As he recorded his message, Jisoo entered the room, carrying a small metal object. "I found this embedded in one of the escape pods," she said, placing it on the desk. It's not ours. Taiho paused his recording and examined the object. It was about the size of his thumb, with strange markings along its surface. Vorn technology. Jisoo nodded. I think it's part of their targeting system. It attached to our hull and helped guide their weapons. The interesting part is what it's made of. She pointed to the strange, shifting colors beneath the surface. This material doesn't match anything in our database, but its molecular structure suggests it can absorb and redirect energy on a quantum level. Can we use this? Maybe. If I can understand how it works, we might be able to develop some kind of defense against their weapons, or even adapt it for our own use. Taiho added the information to his report, then sent the emergency transmission to Earth Command. After sending Dr. Han and Officer Chen off on the runner ship toward Outpost 37, he gathered the remaining senior officers in the outpost's small meeting room. We need to understand why the Vorn attacked us, he said, and we need to prepare for what comes next. Min-ji, the ship's science officer, brought up a holographic display of the known galaxy. The Vorn Confederacy controls this region, she said, highlighting a large section of space that bordered Earth Alliance territory. We know very little about them. The other species we've encountered either avoid mentioning them or seem afraid to discuss them openly. Great, Sung Min muttered. So we've managed to anger the neighborhood bullies without even trying. They're technologically advanced, Jisoo added. Their ships appeared and disappeared using some kind of jump technology we haven't seen before, and their weapons cut through our shields like they weren't even there. The discussion continued for hours as they analyzed what little information they had. The crew was scared and angry, but they were also some of Earth's best and brightest. Instead of giving in to fear, they channeled their emotions into problem solving. 3 days later, as the crew prepared to board the transport ships that would take them back to Earth, Taiho received a response from Earth Command. As the senior officers gathered around, Admiral Hyun Song's serious face appeared on screen. Captain Kim, your warning has been received and taken very seriously, the Admiral said. The attack on the Dauntless was not an isolated incident. 2 other ships have gone missing near Vorn space in the past month. We believe them lost to navigation errors until now. The officers exchanged worried glances. Return to Earth immediately, Admiral Song continued. The Defense Council has called an emergency session. They've also approved the activation of Project Thunderbolt. Jisoo gasped. That's just theoretical research. The technology isn't ready. It will be, Taiho said grimly. Because it has to be. As the message ended, a hush fell over the room. They all knew what Project Thunderbolt represented, Earth's most advanced and dangerous weapons research, deemed too risky for practical application until now. They broke our ship, Taiho said, looking at each of his officers. So we'll build one they'll never be able to break. And we'll show them that humans aren't as weak as they think. As the transport ship broke away from the mining outpost, the officers watched the debris field of the Dauntless fade from view. It marked the end of humanity's age of innocent exploration and the beginning of something new, an age where humans would have to fight for their place among the stars. Taiho looked at the small piece of Vorn technology that Jisoo had secured in a containment box. The aliens had meant to teach humans a lesson in fear. Instead, they had given them the key to building the most dangerous ship the galaxy had ever seen. 6 months had passed since the attack on the KSS Dauntless. Captain Taiho Kim stood at the large window overlooking the massive shipyard that orbited Earth. The Seoul orbital shipyards had always been busy, but now the activity had reached a whole new level. Workers in spacesuits moved like ants across the frame of what would become humanity's answer to the Vorn threat. Impressive, isn't it? Engineer Jisoo Park joined him at the window. She looked different now, more serious, with dark circles under her eyes from working too many late nights. Like many survivors of the Dauntless, she had thrown herself into Project Thunderbolt with a fierce dedication. I never thought I'd see it built, Taiho said. The plans were just theories when we were in training. The Vorn changed that, Jisoo replied. Nothing makes humans work faster than fear and anger. Since returning to Earth, the crew of the Dauntless had been split up. Some went to different ships, others to research labs. But the key officers had been assigned to Project Thunderbolt, the building of a ship unlike any humanity had created before. Tai-Ho and Ji-Soo walked from the observation deck to the main briefing room. Inside, they found Tactical Officer Sung-min studying the latest weapon designs on a large screen. His broken arm had healed, but he now had a long scar running from his wrist to his elbow, a permanent reminder of the day they escaped the Dauntless. "Captain," he nodded, "you're just in time. Admiral Song is bringing Dr. Lee to show us the new systems." Dr. Hannah Lee was Earth's leading expert in advanced physics. Before the Vorn attack, her ideas had been considered too dangerous and untested for use in actual ships. Now, her once radical designs formed the core of Project Thunderbolt. The door slid open, and Admiral Hyun Song entered with Dr. Lee close behind. The Admiral's uniform was perfect as always, but there was a tightness around his eyes that showed the stress of the past months. "Good, you're all here," Admiral Song said. "I'll get right to the point. We've received word of Vorn ships near our colony on Ta City. They haven't attacked yet, but their presence is a clear threat. We need to speed up our timeline." Dr. Lee stepped forward. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick movements. "The KSS Retribution is ahead of schedule, but rushing the final systems would be dangerous." "How dangerous?" Tai-Ho asked. "The ship could destroy itself and possibly create a small tear in spacetime," Dr. Lee said calmly, as if describing nothing more serious than a risk of rain. Ji-Soo let out a low whistle. "That's not ideal." "No, but neither is losing another colony," Admiral Song replied. "Doctor, please show them what we've accomplished." Dr. Lee nodded and touched her tablet. The room darkened, and a detailed hologram of the ship appeared in the center of the room. The KSS Retribution looked unlike any Earth ship before it. Where most human vessels were practical and straight-lined, this ship had smooth curves and unusual angles that seemed to bend in strange ways if you looked at them too long. "The outer hull is complete," Dr. Lee explained. "It uses the quantum-folded armor we developed based on the Vorn technology Ji-Soo recovered. It doesn't just block attacks, it absorbs the energy and can redirect it." The hologram zoomed in on sections of the ship as she spoke. "The gravitational disruptors are installed here, here, and here." She pointed to 3 spots along the ship's sides. "They can tear apart the molecular bonds of any object within a 5-kilometer range. We've added safety locks to prevent accidental activation." "And the temporal displacement drive?" Tai-Ho asked. Dr. Lee's expression grew more serious. "That's what's causing the delay. The mathematics are sound, but the actual building of the drive is challenging. We've never made a device that can jump a ship through microseconds of time before." "Microseconds doesn't sound very impressive," Sung-min said. "It's enough to make the ship vanish and reappear just as an enemy weapon would hit," Dr. Lee replied. "In battle, those microseconds mean the difference between destruction and survival." Admiral Song stepped forward again. "The Council has given us 2 more weeks to complete the ship. After that, the Retribution will launch, ready or not." After the meeting, Tai-Ho and Ji-Soo walked through the partially built corridors of the new ship. Most of the systems were still being installed, with wires hanging from ceilings and walls still missing their panels. But even incomplete, the Retribution felt different from any ship they had served on before. "It's like walking inside a physics problem," Ji-Soo said as they entered what would become the engine room. "Half of the technology in this ship was considered impossible a year ago." "Will it work?" Tai-Ho asked quietly. Ji-Soo paused before answering. "Yes, but there are risks. The temporal drive. We're playing with forces we don't fully understand. The Vorn didn't give us much choice." "No, they didn't. But sometimes I wonder if we're becoming what they feared, a species willing to break the rules of physics just to win." Tai-Ho touched the wall of the ship, feeling a strange vibration under his fingers even though the engines weren't installed yet. "We're not doing this to conquer or destroy," he said. "We're doing it to survive, to protect our people." Before Jisoo could answer, Taiho's communicator beeped. Admiral Song's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Captain Kim, report to the command center immediately." 5 minutes later, Taiho stood with the other senior officers watching a disturbing video feed. The human colony on Ta City was under attack. 3 Vorn ships, similar to the ones that had destroyed the Dauntless, were firing on the colony's defenses. "This is happening right now," Admiral Song said grimly. "Our nearest ships are 3 days away. By then, it will be too late." Dr. Lee looked up from her tablet, her face pale. "The retribution isn't ready. The life support systems aren't fully online, and the temporal drive hasn't been tested." "Can it fly?" Admiral Song asked. "Yes, but can it fight?" Dr. Lee hesitated, then nodded slowly. "The weapons work, but using an untested temporal drive could be suicide." All eyes turned to Taiho. As the chosen captain of the Retribution, the decision would ultimately be his. "How many people on that colony?" he asked. 8,322. Some men answered immediately. Taiho took a deep breath. "Then we have no choice. We launch now." The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. Crew members were called in from their homes and training facilities. Essential systems were rushed to completion while others were left for later. Weapons were loaded, emergency protocols established. Standing on the bridge of the Retribution, Taiho looked at the faces of his crew. Many were from the Dauntless. Others were specialists chosen for their expertise with the new technologies. All looked nervous but determined. "This ship was built in response to an attack," Taiho said to them. "The Vorn thought they could break us, scare us into staying small and weak. Instead, they pushed us to create something revolutionary. Today, we show them their mistake." Minji Choi, the navigation officer, looked up from her station. "Course to Ta City plotted, Captain. Conventional engines would take us 3 days to reach the colony." "We don't have 3 days," Taiho replied. "Jisoo, is the temporal displacement drive online?" Jisoo's hands moved quickly over her console. "Yes, Captain. But I must warn you again, this technology has never been used on this scale before. The calculations say it will work, but theory and reality don't always match." "Noted," Taiho said, "but 8,000 lives are at stake." He sat in the captain's chair and fastened the special restraints designed for temporal jumps. "All crew secure for temporal displacement. We're about to make history, one way or another." Throughout the ship, crew members rushed to secure themselves and their stations. No one knew exactly what would happen when the drive activated. "Drive charging," Jisoo reported, her voice steady despite her fear. "Ready in 3, 2, 1. Taiho gripped his chair. "Engage." For a split second, nothing happened. Then the universe seemed to bend around them. Every person on the ship felt as if they were being pulled in all directions at once, while also being compressed to a single point. Colors no human had ever seen flash before their eyes. And then, suddenly, it was over. "Location?" Taiho asked, fighting through a wave of nausea. Minji checked her instruments, her hands shaking slightly. "Ta City system, Captain. We're here." The jump worked. On the main screen, they could see the Vorn ships in the distance, still attacking the colony. The attackers had no idea that the most dangerous ship humans had ever built had just arrived, and was ready to fight. The KSS Retribution hung silently in space. The temporal jump had worked, bringing them to the Ta City system in an instant instead of days. Through the main view screen, Captain Taiho Kim could see 3 Vorn ships firing on the human colony below. Their sleek, crystal-like vessels glowed with blue energy as they sent blast after blast toward the planet's surface. "They haven't spotted us yet," Tactical Officer Sungmin said, checking his sensors. "Our position is just outside their detection range." Status report, Taiho ordered, fighting the lingering dizziness from the jump. Jisoo worked quickly at her engineering station. The temporal drive is cooling down. Main weapons are online. Shields at 80%. Some minor systems were damaged during the jump, but nothing critical. Life support is stable, added Dr. Lee, who had insisted on coming along to monitor her inventions. Though I wouldn't recommend making another temporal jump for at least 12 hours. Taiho nodded and turned to Communications Officer Do Young. Any response from the colony? Do Young pressed his hand to his earpiece. Yes, Captain. They're still holding out in the underground shelters, but their defensive shields are failing. They report about 300 casualties so far. A grim silence fell over the bridge. 300 dead already, with thousands more at risk if the Vorn broke through to the shelters. We need a plan, Taiho said. We can't just charge in. The retribution is powerful, but we're still just one ship against 3. We have the element of surprise, some men pointed out. They don't know we can reach them this quickly. And they've never seen our new weapons. Jisoo looked up from her console. Captain, I have an idea. The quantum-folded armor doesn't just absorb energy, it can redirect it. If we get close enough to one of their ships, we could absorb their weapon fire and channel it back at them. How close? Taiho asked. Within 1 kilometer. Taiho exchanged looks with Sungmin. That was dangerously close in space combat. And the gravitational disruptors? Taiho asked. They're untested in real combat, Dr. Lee answered. But in theory, they should be able to tear apart their weapons from a distance of 5 kilometers. Navigation Officer Minji spoke up. Captain, I've analyzed their attack pattern. The Vorn ships are moving in a rotating formation. Every 6 minutes, one ship takes a position here. She pointed to a spot on the tactical display, while the other 2 continue bombarding the colony. If we time it right, we could catch one ship alone before the others can respond. Taiho studied the display, then made his decision. Here's the plan. We'll use minimal power to drift into position near this asteroid cluster. When the next Vorn ship reaches the far point in their rotation, we hit it with the gravitational disruptors, targeting their weapons only. Then we make ourselves known to the other 2 ships. Sir, some men questioned, why reveal ourselves after taking out just one ship's weapons? Because we're not here to destroy them, Taiho said firmly. We're here to send a message. Humanity is not weak, and we're not helpless. But we're also not murderers. We defend, we don't massacre. The crew moved to their positions, the ship quietly drifting through space toward the asteroid cluster. The next 20 minutes felt like hours as they watched the Vorn ships continue their attack on the colony. The first ship is moving into position, Minji announced. 30 seconds until optimal targeting. Power up the gravitational disruptors, Taiho ordered. Target their main weapon arrays only. Jisoo's fingers flew over her console. Disruptors charged and ready. 20 seconds, Minji counted down. Taiho leaned forward in his chair. Remember, precision is key. We want to disable, not destroy. 10 seconds. 5. Target locked. Sungmin reported. Fire, Taiho commanded. There was no visible beam or explosion, just a slight ripple in space between the Retribution and the Vorn ship. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, parts of the alien vessel's weapon systems simply fell apart, breaking into tiny pieces that drifted away like dust. Direct hit, Sungmin confirmed, excitement in his voice. Their main weapons are completely disabled. The Vorn ship immediately changed course, spinning around as if looking for its attacker. The other 2 ships broke their attack pattern, clearly receiving distress signals from their companion. They're scanning the area, Du Young reported. Their communication channels are going crazy. Time to introduce ourselves, Taiho said. Move us out of the asteroid field. Full power to shields. Du Young, open a channel to all 3 Vorn ships. As the Retribution glided into open space, The Vorn ships quickly detected it. Two of them immediately turned to face the human vessel, charging their weapons. "Channel open, Captain," Du Young said. Taiho stood up. "This is Captain Taiho Kim of the Earth Alliance vessel Retribution. You are attacking a peaceful human colony without provocation. Cease your assault immediately and withdraw from this system." The only response was a barrage of energy blasts from the two undamaged Vorn ships. The shots streaked across space toward the Retribution. "Brace for impact," Taiho warned. But instead of the expected hit, the quantum-folded armor glowed as it absorbed the energy, spreading it across the hull of the ship. The Retribution shuddered slightly, but held firm. "Armor functioning perfectly," Jisoo reported with a smile. "Energy absorbed at 87% efficiency. They're preparing to fire again," Sungmin warned. "Minji, prepare for a micro-jump, 3 seconds duration. Position us behind their formation," Taiho ordered. Jisoo, ready gravitational disruptors for their engines. Low power, just enough to get their attention. The crew worked quickly, and when the Vorn fired again, the Retribution simply vanished, reappearing behind the alien ships. Before they could turn around, the gravitational disruptors fired, causing minor damage to their engine housings. "Open the channel again," Taiho said. Du Young nodded. "Channel open. This is your final warning." Taiho's voice was stern but controlled. "We have disabled the weapons on one of your ships and could easily do the same to the others. We can target your engines next, leaving you stranded in this system. Or you can end this attack and return to your territory. The choice is yours." The Vorn ships hung in space, no longer firing but not retreating either. Then, slowly, they began to move away from the colony. "They're leaving orbit," Minji confirmed, setting course back toward Vorn space. A cheer went up from the bridge crew, quickly silenced by Taiho's raised hand. "Stay alert. This could be a trick." But the Vorn continued their retreat, the damaged ship moving more slowly than the others. "Captain," Du Young called out, "I'm receiving a transmission from the lead Vorn ship. It's different from their internal communications. I think it's meant for us." "On screen," Taiho ordered. The main screen flickered, and for the first time, the crew of the Retribution saw a Vorn. The alien had a silvery, smooth face with no visible mouth and 6 small eyes arranged in a circle. When it spoke, the words came as a series of clicks and whistles that the ship's computer translated. "Human vessel." The translation came through. "Your weapons are unexpected. The High Command will be informed of this development." Taiho stepped forward. "Tell your High Command that humans wish for peace, but we will defend ourselves and our colonies. This is your territory." He gestured to a star map, drawing a line. "And this is ours. Respect our borders, and we will respect yours." The Vorn's eyes blinked in sequence. "Your species has evolved more quickly than anticipated. This changes the assessment." With that cryptic message, the transmission ended. The Vorn ships continued their retreat until they were at the edge of the system. "They've entered faster than light travel," Sungmin reported. "They're gone." The tension on the bridge finally broke. Crew members laughed, hugged, or simply sat back in relief. Taiho allowed himself a small smile before addressing the colony. "Du Young, contact the colony leaders. Tell them the threat has passed and ask what assistance they need." As the Retribution moved into orbit around the colony world, ships began to emerge from the planet's surface, small transport vessels carrying medical teams and supplies to damaged areas. A woman's face appeared on the screen. Governor Maya of the Tav City colony. Her expression was a mixture of relief and amazement. "Captain Kim, you have our deepest thanks," she said. "Our sensors showed 3 Vorn warships retreating from a single Earth vessel. How is that possible?" Taiho glanced at his crew before answering. "Let's just say that humans are full of surprises, Governor. The Vorn broke one of our ships, so we built one they couldn't break." As the Retribution began helping with relief efforts, news of its victory spread quickly across human space. The ship that had been built out of desperation had proven itself in battle, not by destroying its enemies, but by showing them that humanity could not be easily conquered. 6 more Vorn ships arrived at the edge of the system 2 days later, but they made no aggressive moves. They simply watched as the humans repaired their colony. A message and a warning. The battle for humanity's place among the stars had just begun. 3 months after the battle at Tau Ceti, Captain Tae-ho Kim stood in a large meeting room on Neutral Station Alpha. The space station had been built in unclaimed territory between Earth Alliance Space and the Vorn Confederacy. It was here that humans and Vorn would meet face to face for the first time in an official capacity. "Are you nervous?" Jisoo asked, straightening her formal uniform. Like Tae-ho, she had been chosen to represent humanity at this historic meeting. "A little," Tae-ho admitted. "It's not every day you sit down with people who tried to kill you." Admiral Song entered the room with Dr. Lee and several Earth government officials. The Admiral looked tired but satisfied. "The Vorn delegation will arrive in 10 minutes, he told them. "Remember, this is not just about the retribution or what happened at Tau Ceti. This is about the future of human-Vorn relations." Tae-ho nodded. In the 3 months since the retribution had driven off the Vorn attack, much had changed. News of the ship's capabilities had spread throughout known space. The quantum-folded armor, gravitational disruptors, and temporal displacement drive were now famous, or infamous, depending on who you asked. Earth had quickly built 3 more ships like the Retribution, each with improvements based on what they had learned. The Defiance, the Guardian, and the Protector now patrolled the borders of human space, a clear message to anyone who might consider attacking Earth or its colonies. But today was about finding a way forward without more fighting. "They're here," Du Young announced from the doorway. As communications officer, he would serve as translator if the Vorn's own systems failed. The doors slid open, and the Vorn delegation entered. 5 aliens moved with a strange gliding motion, their silvery bodies reflecting the room's lights. The leader wore a complex collar of what looked like crystal shards, some kind of rank insignia, Tae-ho guessed. Admiral Song stepped forward. "On behalf of the Earth Alliance, I welcome you to Neutral Station Alpha. I am Admiral Gunsong." The lead Vorn's 6 eyes blinked in sequence before it responded in its clicking language, which a small device translated into human speech. "I am High Commander Thal of the Vorn Confederacy. We come to speak of boundaries and understandings." The 2 groups sat at the large oval table. Tae-ho found himself directly across from a Vorn that stared at him with unblinking eyes. "We should begin by addressing the incidents that brought us here," Admiral Song suggested. "The unprovoked attack on the KSS Dauntless 7 months ago, and the attack on Tau Ceti Colony 3 months ago." High Commander Thal's smooth head tilted slightly. "We observe human expansion with concern. Your ships moved closer to our space. Your colonies grew quickly. The Confederacy has existed for 12,000 years by eliminating threats before they become dangerous." "We were not a threat," Tae-ho said, unable to stay silent. "The Dauntless was a diplomatic vessel." "Indeed," the Vorn replied. "But what followed proved our concerns were valid. In just 6 months, humans created a ship with technology that shocked our best scientists. The KSS Retribution represents an evolutionary leap that should have taken centuries." "Because you forced our hand," Jisoo said. "We built the Retribution out of necessity." The High Commander's eyes blinked again. "Precisely. This is what makes humans dangerous. Not your weapons, but how quickly you create them when threatened. No other species we have encountered adapts with such speed." Admiral Song leaned forward. "Then perhaps it's better to be our ally than our enemy." The discussions continued for hours. The Vorn were direct in their concerns but seemed willing to find a peaceful solution. By the end of the day, they had agreed on basic terms: recognized borders between their territories, rules for ships crossing into neutral space, and regular communication to prevent misunderstandings. As the meeting ended, High Commander Thal approached Tae-ho privately. "Captain Kim, your ship is unlike any we have seen in our long history. The alien said, "Our scientists believe your temporal displacement drive violates several laws of physics." Tai-Ho nodded. Dr. Lee said the same thing. "But sometimes you have to break the rules to survive." "Indeed. May I ask, what else could this technology do, if pushed beyond its current limitations?" Tai-Ho hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. Dr. Lee's theories suggest that with modifications, the drive could possibly move a ship through minutes or even hours of time, not just microseconds, but the risks would be enormous. A miscalculation could tear a hole in space-time itself. The Vorn's eyes widened slightly, the first clear emotional reaction Tai-Ho had seen from them. "This is why we must have peace between our peoples, Captain. Some weapons are too dangerous to use." 2 days later, the treaty was signed. The Earth Alliance and the Vorn Confederacy agreed to recognize each other's territories and establish regular diplomatic contact. Other alien species watched these developments with great interest. The humans, previously seen as newcomers to galactic politics, had suddenly become major players. Back aboard the Retribution, Tai-Ho called his senior officers to the conference room. "Well, we did it," he said. "Peace with the Vorn, at least for now. Do you trust them?" Some men asked. "Trust takes time," Tai-Ho replied. "But I believe they're sincere about wanting to avoid a war. They've been the dominant power in this sector for thousands of years. They're not used to finding equals." "They're scared of us," Minji said quietly. "I saw it in the way they looked at the ship's schematics during the technical exchange. They truly didn't believe the temporal drive was possible until they saw the math." Jisoo nodded. "Dr. Lee told me that the Vorn scientists were especially worried about what would happen if we increased the drive's power. Their civilization is built on strict rules and predictability. The idea that humans might accidentally tear a hole in reality terrifies them." "Good," some men said with a small smile. "Fear can be a powerful motivator for peace." Tai-Ho shook his head. "Fear can also lead to desperate actions. We need to be careful with this power we've created. The Retribution was built to defend humanity, not to threaten the galaxy." 3 weeks later, the Retribution prepared for its next mission. With peace established with the Vorn, the ship was being sent beyond known space to explore regions no human had ever visited. Standing on the bridge, Tai-Ho looked at his crew with pride. They had faced death, made history, and changed humanity's place in the galaxy. "Captain," Minji called from her station. "Course is set for the Andromeda Reach. All systems ready." "Thank you, navigation," Tai-Ho replied. He pressed a button on his chair. "All decks, this is the captain. We are about to venture into unknown territory. 6 months ago, the Vorn attacked us because they feared what humans might become. They weren't entirely wrong to be afraid." He paused, looking at the stars on the main screen. The KSS Retribution was built as a weapon, the most dangerous ship humans have ever created. But today, we turn it into something else, a vessel of exploration and discovery. We carry with us the best of humanity, our curiosity, our ingenuity, and our desire to understand rather than conquer. Around the ship, crew members listened to their captain's words. "The Vorn broke our ship because they were afraid of what we might become," Tai-Ho continued. "Now it's up to us to show the galaxy what humans truly are. Not conquerors, not destroyers, but explorers and builders. Let's make this ship worthy of its name, not through fear, but through the respect we earn." Jisoo smiled at him from her station. "Poetic, Captain." "I have my moments," he replied with a small smile. Then he straightened in his chair. "Helm, engage main drive. Let's see what's out there." The KSS Retribution moved away from Earth, its advanced systems humming with power. It had been built out of fear and necessity, designed to be the most dangerous weapon humans could create. But as it headed toward the unknown, it carried with it a different message: that the true strength of humanity wasn't in its weapons, but in its ability to adapt, to learn, and to turn even the darkest moments into opportunities for growth. Behind them, The Vorn watched the ship's departure with their many eyes. They had tried to break humanity before it could become a threat. Instead, they had helped create something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. A species that could not be broken, only made stronger by the attempt. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other eyes were watching too. New civilizations, new challenges, new adventures waiting to be discovered by the most dangerous ship ever built.